Hey, you may sit around talking to your buddies and telling them all how strong your game is, but let's be realistic. Sometimes you gotta use a little bit of safety. Fantasy football, no different. In this episode, we're talking about the top 5 safest wide receivers in the first 5 rounds. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully you guys are all doing well out there. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios. Today we're talking safety from the wide receiver position. In this episode, I have 5 wide receivers, one from each of the first 5 rounds of your fantasy football drafts that are, in my opinion, the safest picks in those rounds at that wide receiver position. Now, by all means, I'm not saying these are the best 5 in all of fantasy football. Don't get that confused. These are the safest ones. I went and pulled the most current ADPs from fantasyfootballcalculator.com, and I picked the safest wide receiver in each round. Put them in a list, throwing it out here to you guys, so you guys have that idea that in the early rounds, the important rounds, where you really want to limit the amount of risk you're going to take, these are the safest wide receivers. We're going to be doing this show for running backs also, so before you throw that comment down there, that's coming more than likely in the next day or two. But real quick, before we get into this list, head over to our website. Our draft guide is for sale, and they are flying off virtual shelves. I mean it. They're going absolutely crazy, and this is the last day that you have to purchase your draft guide to be entered in to win the autographed Kamara jersey hanging over my shoulder. Don't miss out on it. Get your copy today. People are loving the draft guide. But now, let's talk a little safety. Let's talk about who are the safest wide receivers in the first 5 rounds. All right, so who do I think is the safest wide receiver in round 1 with at least an ADP of round 1 as of right now? It's Michael Thomas of the New Orleans Saints, and I can hear it already. The trolls, they're out there typing, why didn't you say DeAndre Hopkins, and where's Devontae Adams? I can hear you already. But that's not what we're talking about in this episode. We're not saying who the best wide receiver is. We're not saying who has the highest ceiling wide receiver is. We're talking about who the safest wide receiver is. I mean, heck, it's scrolling on the screen right now below you. You can see it, safest early round wide receivers. That's what we're talking about. And this is why I love Michael Thomas. Now, I know it seems like Michael Thomas has been around longer, but he's only been in the league for 3 years. However, over those 3 years, he's had 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons and averaged just under 8 touchdowns a year. Over the last 2 years, he's had at least 147 targets. Last year finished 3rd in the NFL with yards after catch. Gotta love the yak yards. And it wasn't a fluke. The year before that, in 2017, he finished 5th. So back-to-back top 5 finishes in yak yards. Last year, led the NFL in red zone receptions with 24 of them. He also led the NFL in catchable target rate at 95.2%. And if you don't hear that stat a lot, it's because a lot of people don't use it, but I don't understand why. People are so concerned with the amount of targets that a wide receiver gets, they don't take into account how many of those targets were actually catchable. Do you realize that if a quarterback throws the ball out of bounds because he's feeling pressure, whoever the closest wide receiver was to him gets credit for a target? That doesn't mean anything. It wasn't catchable. Last year, Michael Thomas had a catchable target rate of 95.2%. That shows the accuracy of Drew Brees. When the balls are going the way of Michael Thomas, that sounds weird, he's catching them. He is absolutely doing the most with the amount of opportunities that he's getting. Now, once again, there's no true wide receiver 2 in New Orleans, and that's why I put him ahead of some of these other ones as far as safety goes. The other top guys, the Devontae Adams, the DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckhams, Julio Jones, they have other people around them on that roster that are capable of taking up huge numbers of targets. They don't have that in New Orleans. Now, yes, Jared Cook was brought in this year. He could take away some of those red zone looks that Michael Thomas capitalized last season. However, I really expect Michael Thomas, he should once again be a league leader in targets, receptions, and yards. He's going to be one of the safest wide receivers in this draft. And in round 1, especially the back half of round 1, love Michael Thomas. All right, moving on to round 2. Who is the safest wide receiver in my opinion? It's Adam Thielen, wide receiver, Minnesota Vikings, and he's durable, right? He hasn't missed a game yet in his 5-year career. He's going to be out there on game day for your fantasy football teams. Now, over the last 2 seasons, he's had at least 140 targets, but to me, one of the most impressive things that I saw with Adam Thielen in 2018 was not only that he was third in receptions, it's that he was also fourth in the NFL in air yards with 1,002 air yards on 113 receptions. To me, that tells me they're not dinking and dunking with Adam Thielen. They're throwing the ball down the field, and he's getting a lot of those big chunk, those big play receptions in this offense. Now, I don't need to sit here and tell you how great Adam Thielen is and try to sell him on you. I think you guys know by now he's one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. However, we've said it on this channel multiple times. We can see Stefon Diggs take another step forward this year and possibly become that big play threat in this offense. And we'll talk about him here in just a little bit. However, that does not mean that all the value is just taken away from Adam Thielen. The safety part of it, the safeness, the targets, the volume, that's still going to be there. The big playability may just take a slight step back. But despite Minnesota wanting to run the ball even a little bit more this year than maybe they have in the past, last year, they were still 6th in the NFL in pass attempts per game with 40.5. And the defenses can't solely focus on Adam Thielen. Why? Well, we've already talked about Stefon Diggs on the opposite side. Now, he may have that less of a big play threat here in 2019, but the consistency, the safety, it's still there for Adam Thielen. He's still going to be a solid wide receiver for you and your fantasy football teams. There's nothing else to say about Adam Thielen except dude is safe. All right, moving on to the third round now, and it's his teammate. It's Stefon Diggs of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, before I get into this, no, I'm not saying it's a great idea to go draft Thielen and Diggs in back-to-back rounds. That's not the purpose of this. Who knows how your draft has gone by now? I do not take 2 players from the same position from the same team and plan on starting them on a weekly basis. So that's not what this is about. However, looking for a wide receiver in round 3, Stefon Diggs, in my opinion, is your safest option. Now listen, a lot of the same that we said for Adam Thielen really goes for Stefon Diggs, but here's the deal. Diggs may not be as safe as Thielen is, but that big play upside is going to be there for sure here in 2019. This guy had 6 touchdowns over his last 8 games and turned into one of the best wide receivers in all of the NFL. Last year, he had a contested catch rate of 59.3%. Good enough for 6th in the NFL. The guy is going to go up and get the football. He wants those 50-50 balls. He plays with that chip on his shoulder. He's out there trying to make plays happen. He's not just running his route and pouting if he doesn't get the ball. This is going to be the big play guy for the Minnesota Vikings here in 2019. Now, I don't need to go into all the Vikings stats again, kind of like we did with Adam Thielen, but here's the deal. Look at the other wide receivers in this round right now. With the current ADP in the 3rd round, you tell me if you don't think Stefon Diggs is the safest option out there. Right now in the 3rd round, Antonio Brown, the dude with no skin on his feet. T.Y. Hilton, love T.Y. Hilton, but are we worried about Andrew Luck a little bit now? Amari Cooper, dealing with the plantar fasciitis. I mean, these guys got issues. Those are the only other wide receivers in this round right now. To me, Stefon Diggs is hands down the safest wide receiver option here that you can get in the 3rd round. Number 4 is going to be Julian Edelman, wide receiver, New England Patriots. And yes, I know, he's got a broken thumb. I read the reports just like you guys do. But listen, so what? The dude has a broken thumb right now. Does he really miss any regular season time? That's still a question. He's still there with the team in camp all offseason here. He's not missing a beat. He may not be out there physically practicing with him, but he's being a part of this team. He's being a leader of this team. But here is what we do know. He isn't going to miss any significant time due to this injury. And he is one of, if not the clear-cut top target of one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in Tom Brady. Now, over the past 5 seasons in New England, Julian Edelman has averaged, and yes, I said averaged, just over 11 targets per game. And he's done all that while still dealing in the past with the Gronks and Brandon Cookses and James Whites, who have soaked up almost 100 targets a season themselves in the past. Now, despite missing 4 games due to suspension last year, he still finished 7th in the NFL with 14 red zone receptions. We already know the chemistry is there with Brady. They don't need to work on it here in the offseason. I'm pretty sure they know where each other is going to be. And the Patriots, right now, they're in some serious need of some reliable pass catchers in this offense. Yes, they signed Cam Meredith, currently on PUP. Demaryius Thomas, coming off a torn Achilles, really isn't expected to do a whole lot. Not the same old Demaryius Thomas that you're thinking of. And after that, you have a bunch of guys who may have had some hype in the past on other teams that just didn't pan out. Lower tier wide receiver options. And then you have rookie wide receiver N'Keal Harry, who looked great in his first preseason game, but now he's dealing with a minor injury. Does he miss any time? Plus, he's a rookie wide receiver. He's not going to go out there and get you 150 targets in this Tom Brady, Bill Belichick offense. He's going to have weekly inconsistencies. Who's going to be the consistent one in this offense? It's going to be Julian Edelman. He is by far the safest option for one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, like I mentioned earlier. In the 4th round, if you're looking for a wide receiver, a safe wide receiver, more than likely your wide receiver 2, you can do a lot worse than Julian Edelman. That's who I'm taking as my safest wide receiver in the 4th round. All right, round 5 ADP. Who's the safest wide receiver in my opinion in this round? It's Jarvis Landry, wide receiver of the Cleveland Browns, and the haters are out there already. I can hear them again. A lot of haters probably going to happen on this video, but you know what? If you don't listen, I don't care. Jarvis Landry is going to be safe this year. One of the biggest knocks is like, hey, yeah, Odell Beckham's in town. Landry ain't going to see nothing. But then those same people will also come at you and say, well, I'm not going to draft Odell Beckham because he's always hurt. Well, if he's always hurt, who's going to get the bulk of the targets? It's still Jarvis Landry, but you're paying for him as a wide receiver 2 in your draft. And people are terrified of it. But why? I don't get it. I'm not one of those guys. Where you can get Jarvis Landry, like I said, more than likely, he's going to be your wide receiver 2, heck, maybe even your wide receiver 3. Say what you want, but the Cleveland offense is going to absolutely roll this year, and Odell Beckham Jr. is going to command a lot of defensive attention when he's on the field. The run game should definitely keep defenders honest. You know all about Gimme Chubb in that backfield. The defense cannot just solely focus on the passing game. Nick Chubb in that run game, that's going to be a real thing that they have to worry about. Jarvis could see more one-on-one coverage this season than an elementary school basketball court. This guy, who has always been the number 1 on his NFL team anyway, has commanded the defense's top and best attention for years since he's been in the NFL. He has great hands. He has the ability to get open. Heck, last year, his average target separation was 1.66 yards. That's almost 5 feet, which may not sound like a lot, but in the NFL, that's almost considered wide open. Now, he may not be this 1,000-yard, double-digit touchdown wide receiver that you really want, but I could definitely see 80 receptions, 900 yards, and 6 touchdowns all day long from Jarvis Landry. If you put that together and add up those PPR points, that would have made him wide receiver 22 last year. You're getting him in the 5th round. It's a great deal. I'm saying it now. Jarvis Landry in the 5th round, it's a safe pick. All right, so those were my safest wide receivers here in the top 5 rounds of your fantasy football draft. Hopefully that helped you out. If it does, hit that like button for me. I greatly appreciate it. Just want to throw a reminder out there. Our draft guide that's for purchase, $19.99 all the way up until week 1, and we're making constant updates. In fact, the update that's going out today, we've added things to it. It was already almost 500 pages of fantasy football content, digital content now. We've added top 200 cheat sheets. There's all kinds of options in there for different formats. There's even some IDP information in there. So make sure, go get your copy now, $19.99 at thefantasyheadliners.com. Plus, if you order today, it's the last day to order to enter yourself into the contest giveaway for this autographed Alvin Kamara jersey over my shoulder. Go get yours. Really appreciate the support out there for Headliner Nation. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you later.